guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be testing out and reviewing the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r Hydrating Foundation. I am so beyond excited to be filming this video and to be testing out this foundation because when I first tried out Fenty Beauty back in September of 2017 and I used their original Pro Filt'r foundation, I really did love it. This is going to be more of a soft matte formula, so I'm so beyond happy that that beautiful array of shades is now available in a hydrating formula. So I'm going to be testing this out today. I have very high hopes for this foundation. I have been into more of a dewy look to my foundation. As much as I do love the original Pro Filt'r, I always find this to be just a little bit too matte for me, and I'm excited to see what the hydrating one has to offer. So I really hope that you guys enjoy seeing this video, and if you want to hear my thoughts on this foundation, my first impression and stuff like that, make sure to keep on watching. So as always with all of my reviews, I'm gonna start off with some basic info about the foundation. I will have timestamps down below if you guys are interested in jumping around, if you want to jump right into the application and things like that. But just some basic info. Again, this is the Pro Filt'r Hydrating Longwear Foundation. This retails for $35 and Fenty Beauty is exclusive to fentybeauty.com as well as Sephora. I picked mine up in Sephora inside JCPenney, which I was really happy to see. Usually since Sephora inside JCPenney isn't a full Sephora, a lot of the times they don't get all the shades on display, but they always have all of these shades for Fenty Beauty. I'm sure that's a requirement for Rihanna when it comes to selling in stores. So $35 exclusive to Sephora. It is supposed to have a medium to buildable coverage, a natural finish, and it is good for normal, dry, and combination skin. And it is a liquid formula, of course. I really love this packaging, I have to say. I do think I like the packaging a lot more than the original packaging. It feels a lot more lightweight and a lot more sleek. Even though I would say the original foundation feels like it has more weight to it, it feels a little bit more luxurious. I just love the squeezy tube because it also does have a pump, so you will be able to better control the amount of product that you pump out. And if you guys were wondering, both of these foundations have the same exact amount of product, which is 32 milliliters or 1.08 fluid ounces. And the last thing that I want to touch on before we get on into application is the shade range of this foundation. The hydrating foundation is also available in the beautiful shade range of the original Pro Filt'r foundation as well as the concealer, and the shades do correlate with each other. So if you wear 190 in the soft matte, you're probably going to wear 190 in the hydrating. I picked up a little bit of a different shade just because I do have a little bit more of a tan now that it's summer, and I wanted to make sure the shade matched me perfectly for the purpose of this review and so you guys can get a true sense for this foundation. So in the winter, I wear the shade 190, which is classified as a light to medium with warm undertones, and then right now I picked up the shade 210, which is light to medium with warm neutral undertones. So the shades are really close to each other. 210 is just like a shade down. They're really not that different. This one is just going to match me a little bit better right now, and like I said, I wanted to make sure I had my perfect shade match for the purpose of the review, because sometimes if the shade is off, it could really throw off what I think of the foundation as a whole. I will be inserting swatches of the foundations that I own because I did pick up a sample of the 190 in the hydrating as well, just to show you guys how the 190 in the hydrating compares to the 190 in the soft matte foundation. And then of course I will show you guys the shade that I'm using today, which is 210. And then I also am going to be swatching the concealer in the shade 185 because this is my typical concealer shade. More so in the winter I wear 185 in the concealer, but I figured I would still show you guys just while I have all these swatches up. So those are all these shades of the products that I own in the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r line. So I believe those are all the little details about the foundations and the little comparison that I wanted to do for you guys. I am so excited to see how this is going to look on the skin, so let's just go ahead and jump on into the application. Alright, so time for application. I just want to show you guys that I'm prepping my skin exactly the same that I normally do. I do own the soft matte primer, but I'm not going to use this today because this isn't my typical daily primer. I want to see how this foundation performs with my normal primers, and then if I feel like it gets a little bit too luminous or something, I will go ahead and retest it with the soft matte primer underneath, but I think it's going to do fine on my normal primer. So the first thing that I did off camera was spray my face with the MAC Prep and Prime Fix Plus. It is always essential for me to have some sort of spray underneath my foundation, and then now I'm going to quickly prime my face with the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer because this has just been my favorite go-to primer, and I want to keep everything the same so I know how the the foundation truly looks on the skin. So I'm just going to prime and then we will get into the foundation. So to apply the foundation today, I'm going to be using the Fenty Beauty 110 foundation brush. This does have a little bit of foundation on it, but it is the hydrating foundation because when I got home from Sephora, I just put a little bit on the bottom of my cheek with this brush to make sure it was a decent shade. But I guess being in front of these studio lights will tell all. So just to show you guys, this does have the pump. I'm going to start with maybe I have to shake it. I'm gonna do 2 pumps of this foundation, maybe like 1.5. And if you guys can see the texture there, it is a pretty runny foundation, but so is the original Pro Filt'r. So that definitely doesn't surprise me. So I'm going to start with just a little bit. Ooh, this has that classic Fenty smell that I love. It almost smells like vanilla, like baby powder or something. I love that smell. That matches my neck perfectly. Do you guys see that? That's like the same exact color as my neck. So I definitely think 210 is going to be good for me for a while until my tan fades. So far, this foundation is looking really beautiful off of first impression. I am really loving how it looks. So with the initial amount of product that I used, I was able to pretty much do half of my face. If you guys can see, this is the half of my face where I'm wearing the Hydrating Pro Filt'r foundation. And then of course my face with just the primer on it. So I think it looks really beautiful. Definitely a solid medium coverage. I wouldn't say it's a full coverage right off the bat, but I really do like how it looks. I think it has a beautiful dewy finish, which we all know I love, and that is what I'm going for. I don't know if you guys can see, I'll probably zoom you in once I have the foundation all over my face, but I do feel like my pores do look a little big right here. So here's the foundation on my whole face done. This is definitely very dewy. It feels really nice and hydrating on the skin. But one thing that I noticed, I think it might be the brush that I used with the foundation, is that it looks a little bit streaky on my nose and my forehead. So I'm just gonna take the sponge and kind of press the foundation into the skin. This is a sponge with no excess product, just to really make sure it's like pressed into the skin and we don't have any brush lines, because I do feel like the brush was leaving certain spots on my face looking a little bit streaky. But wow, this looks really pretty. Overall, I think the foundation is looking really pretty. Like I mentioned, definitely not 100% full coverage, and the dewiness is kind of emphasizing some pores and texture on my skin. But I'm gonna see, of course, how it looks once I conceal and do powder and everything. I would never leave this foundation unpowdered, just in my personal opinion. If you guys are very dry, you might be able to get away with that, but I could already tell this probably will be a foundation that would just slip off my face if I didn't powder. I don't know if I put a little bit too much of the foundation on, but for some reason I thought this would feel a little bit more lightweight than it does. It doesn't feel super heavy by any means, but I could definitely feel that I'm wearing foundation on my skin. I don't know if that is because it's more of that dewy hydrating formula. I definitely can feel it on my skin if I'm keeping it 100% honest with you guys. But let me zoom you guys in or just get a little closer so you could see how the foundation is looking on the skin. I mean, I think it looks beautiful. I don't necessarily think I would really need more coverage than this for day to day. If I was wearing this foundation maybe to like an event or something, I probably would put a little bit more on like the bottom halves of my cheeks where I have a little bit more like veiny and redness, maybe a little bit more on my nose. But so far so good. Maybe you guys can see what I'm talking about with my pore area where I have a little bit of texture that is definitely emphasized, but that usually does get toned down once I put a little bit of powder on. But I just wanted to show you guys what the foundation is looking like by itself. For my concealer today, I'm gonna go ahead and use the Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r Instant Retouch Concealer, but I believe this is a little bit light for me right now. I have this one in the shade 185, which I think is going to be really light on this foundation. So just to make sure everything looks nice and doesn't disrupt the review, I'm first gonna go in with just a little touch of the Too Faced Born This Way concealer in the inner corners closest to my eyes to really cover any discoloration, darkness, anything like that. And then I'm gonna apply the Fenty Beauty one a little bit on the lower half of my under eye to really brighten and lift anything up. And then I will let you guys know how the concealer is applied on top of the foundation. Here's how the face is looking with my concealer done. Everything on my face is still wet. I don't have any powder on, but I just wanted to show you guys how the face was looking with the concealer. I think the concealer looks very, very pretty. I always said when I first tried out the Pro Filt'r concealer, you guys can go watch my review after this video. I'll link it right here or down below if you want to check it out. I always said that the Pro Filt'r concealer was really different from the original soft matte foundation, that it had a little bit more time to work with, a little bit more of a luminous creamy finish to it, and I definitely think that this concealer works a lot better with the hydrating foundation opposed to the soft matte. The concealer I feel like definitely just like melts better into the skin. I feel like they just work really, really nicely together, and the shade wasn't that off. Mixing in a little bit of the Too Faced one definitely helped, but I feel like 185 is still nice and brightening and not too stark white for the 210 foundation. But that is how everything is looking. A really nice mesh again between the foundation and the concealer. My face still does feel a little bit makeup-y, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think I am feeling the intense hydration from the foundation, but like I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and set everything with powder, and hopefully it will take some of that wet feeling down. I feel like that's the best way to describe this foundation, is that my face is feeling very wet right now. Like I cannot wait to set it with some powder. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, finish up the rest of my face, and then I will definitely come back and let you guys know how the rest of my face products applied on top of the Pro Filt'r hydrating foundation. So I will see you guys in like half a second your time. All right, you guys, I am back. Here is my full face with the foundation on. Everything applied really nicely on top. I didn't have any issues applying bronzer, blush, highlighter, and all of that stuff. I still didn't spray my skin with Fix Plus, which I definitely am going to do, but I just wanted to show you guys what my skin is looking like before I do that. So I have some thoughts about this foundation. I'm a little bit confused. I don't exactly know how to feel about it yet. I'm a little bit confused and I'm not 100% loving it. So the first thing that I want to mention is you guys saw how like wet and dewy my skin looked. It looked so beautiful and luminous, which I really did love, and I thought that when I would powder, it would kind of take down the luminosity just a little bit, but it wouldn't make it totally look matte and powdery, especially with my Maybelline powder. That is my tried and true powder that I've been using every single day for 3 or 4 years now. I thought it was going to be the perfect combination, but for some reason I feel and I look very, very dry right now, which I thought is really weird because that powder never does that to me, especially wearing that on top of a more full coverage foundation like the Maybelline Super Stay. I never look powdery like this, so I don't know what is going on. I feel like my skin isn't looking the absolute best, but there's just something on my face that I'm not liking. So I'll show you guys what is going on. I'm not sure if it'll look any more smooth on camera, but what I'm saying to you guys is what I am seeing in real life. I feel like it's not the worst foundation I've ever tried. I still do think it looks pretty. I think it looks beautiful on camera, and from far away my skin does look very smooth and perfected, but it just looks extra matte to me. Like right now it's honestly reminding me a lot of the original foundation in combination with the powder, and I don't know why, because I thought it would be just so much more luminous and dewy, but like I said, it's not horrible. It does feel a little bit makeup-y on the skin. So far these are just my first impressions. I am going to put a little bit of Fix Plus on the skin because my skin definitely feels like it needs it right now. And of course I am going to be wearing the foundation throughout the day. And it is just a lot more mattifying than I thought it would be. Like as soon as I put the powder down, I saw just like an instant powderiness and dryness, which I don't know why, because like I said, I really love that powder. But those are my first impressions. I want to know what you guys think. I am going to be doing a wear test and wearing this throughout the day. I want to see how this holds up. I want to see if it starts to look a little bit prettier as my natural oils start to peek through. Like I said, I don't think it looks horrible. It's just not like my favorite foundation at the moment. I think my pores look like a little bit emphasized. I don't know. I think I am going to wear this again, maybe another day or two with maybe a different primer, a different application method, just to see if I could get this foundation to work for me and to look how I want it to look. So I'm going to continue on with the wear test today. Right now it is 12:46. If you guys can see that, I started applying the foundation exactly around 12. So we're going to call the first check-in time 12, and then I'm going to try to wear this for at least like 8 to 10 hours just to see how the foundation is holding up. So I have some stuff to do today. I'm going to do a little shopping for my dorm, so I actually will be like outside in the heat, out and about, and we will see how the foundation holds up and looks in a few hours. So I will see you guys later. Hi guys, I am back for check-in. It is 5:33, just around 5:30. So it has been 5.5 hours since I applied the Fenty Beauty Hydrating Foundation. Now I know when I first put it on, I definitely had some concerns about it. I know I was saying that it was looking really dry, but I'm definitely not looking dry anymore. It is also a very, very hot day. I definitely don't think the foundation has broken down or rubbed off anywhere on the skin. It is definitely still in place, and it definitely looks pretty. I would just say I do have some concerns about the foundation settling into my smile lines and also really emphasizing my pore area. But there's just something about this foundation that I'm not absolutely loving. It's really not blowing me away, which is crazy that I'm even saying that because I thought that I would really love this foundation, but there's just something about it that is not blowing me away. My sweat is coming through this foundation really easily, which is a little strange because I find that a lot of the times the foundation routine that I've been doing really controls my oils and my sweat, but I keep getting like a crazy sweat mustache even just being inside my house in this foundation. Another thing that I realized is that my skin does feel like kind of sticky, and the foundation is transferring onto my fingers. Although I powdered my skin, I am feeling just like sticky and not the most comfortable on the face. I will be back in a few hours and we will see how the foundation is looking after a full day of wear. So I will be back soon. It is time for my final check-in of tonight. It is 9:05 p.m. so it has been 9 hours since I first applied the Fenty Hydrating Foundation. This is what the face is looking like. I am very, very glowy, very dewy and luminous. I really feel like not a lot has changed since I did my 5.5 hour check-in a few hours ago. For being on for 9 hours, the foundation has held up really nicely. Like I said earlier, I was even out and about today, and I feel like nothing really broke down. Everywhere that I put the foundation initially today, the foundation is still there. I will insert a close-up right here so you guys can see how the skin is looking after 9 hours of wear. It definitely is kind of settling around my smile lines and around the side of my nose. Again, I think my pores look a little bit large in this foundation, but I am going to be testing this out again with a different primer. I am really curious to see how this is going to touch up because I do think that this is a foundation I am going to need to touch up throughout the day, at least in the summer while it's still hot out. Even though I don't really know how much more I'm going to be wearing this in the summer, I feel like this is going to be a beautiful foundation for the winter time just because of how hydrating it is. But I'm going to touch it up. I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty Universal Invisimatte Blotting Powder on just a little powder brush to see how this touches up. Oh wow, that like instantly took away the shine. So the powder did take away the shine. I think it touches up pretty nicely, but I don't know what it is. There is something about this foundation that I just don't like how it looks underneath powder. I feel like it did the same thing again when I just touched up right now, where it goes from looking really, really wet and dewy to just so matte and almost like lifeless on the skin. I don't know if you guys can see, maybe if I lower again. I don't know if you guys can see just like around my pore area, it just looks so dry when you combine this really dewy foundation with powder for some reason. I also did just realize I am missing some of the product around my mouth, but I think that was from me wiping off my lipstick earlier, and also just from eating throughout the day. I do tend to lose some of the foundation around my mouth, but I don't know, I feel like this is a foundation that I don't really have solid thoughts on yet. I want to wear this again. Let me back up because I'm so close. I'm gonna wear this tomorrow. I think I'm also gonna try using a little bit less product than I used today, just because maybe that's kind of what I'm seeing on the skin, looking a little bit dry if I used like too much product and it's just built up. But like I said, I don't have any final thoughts right now, but I will definitely come back tomorrow, show you guys how I'm reapplying the foundation, and then check in with you guys at the end of the day. All right, I am back for a new day of wear. I'm going to retest the Fenty foundation. I have been wearing this for a few days. This isn't the immediate next day after my first impression, because I just wanted to kind of use it on my own, play around with different primers, different application methods to see what I was doing wrong in the initial first impression, if I was even doing anything wrong. And I'm just gonna keep it really honest with you guys. I'm still just not loving the foundation. I'm just having a lot of trouble getting this to not look really dry and heavy on the skin. Even when I use less product, when I use a damp sponge, when I use a hydrating primer underneath, I've tried so many different combinations with this foundation and I'm just still not loving it. And I feel like at this point, if I've had to play around with it so much and like kind of change up my foundation routine, which typically works really well, I feel like if I've had to do that so much, then the foundation is kind of not really worth it, if that makes any sense. But I figured I would still show you guys the application one more time. I am going to be using less product. I'm going to be using different primers than I originally used. If you guys remember, my initial thoughts was that the foundation was really, really beautiful and dewy upon application, but as soon as it was powdered, even with a powder that I know I love and that I've been using for years, like my tried and true powder, as soon as the powder mixes in with the foundation, it just turns very, very dry. I feel like it's not having the greatest reaction with the powder, but that's like my favorite powder. I don't want to have to switch powders just to get this foundation to work, if that makes any sense. So I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm not really loving this foundation. I think I am going to return it. It is close to $40 with tax and everything, at least in New York State. So I think I'm going to end up returning this just to get my money back, and maybe I could try out like the brow pencil or something else for you guys from Fenty, and hopefully those products work out for me. So just to show you guys again, so this is a true test and a true review. I'm gonna prep my skin the same way I always do, again starting with MAC Fix Plus. So after testing out the foundation a few different ways over these last few days, I found that the most comfortable and the best way to wear this foundation for me was either with no primer or just with a little bit of primer around my pores, because like I mentioned when I was first doing the first impression, it just emphasized my pores a lot. I'm gonna show you guys half and half today, and then I also realized that I do like this better with a sponge rather than a brush, just because it is such a hydrating formula. I just feel like it soaks into the skin a little bit nicer with a sponge, and it doesn't look as heavy or as streaky. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of the primer and I'm going to prime the right side of my face, and I'm just going to focus the primer right here around the pore area and a little bit on my chin to smooth it out, because when I first wore this, my pores just looked so big. So this definitely is going to help with that. On me, this foundation is just a little bit heavy with a full face of primer. I would be curious to see how this actually works with the hydrating primer. I just thought on me that that would be like too slippy and slidey because I don't have really, really dry skin. So I didn't pick up the hydrating primer, but I know a lot of people have been liking it in combination with that primer. So maybe it would work with that one, but again, I don't like foundations that I have to go out of my way and buy new primers and use different techniques in order to work in my foundation routine. I will admit, I definitely do think I used way too much of the foundation in my initial first impression, so I'm just going to show you guys. I think I'm going to use one whole pump for my whole face, whereas in my initial first impression, I used closer to like 3.5 pumps to cover my whole face. But since testing out this this foundation. Also, please excuse me looking to the side. I'm using the viewfinder as a mirror. Less is definitely more with this foundation. And as you guys can see, a little goes a long way because that is just one pump covering my whole face. So now I'm just taking my damp sponge. This one is from e.l.f., which is my favorite, and just start blending this out. And you guys are going to see that this foundation looks really, really beautiful on its own. I think you guys will like this foundation a lot if you don't have to set your face. And I really, really wish that I had the skin type that was able to get away with unset foundation. Unfortunately, I just don't. My skin does get kind of greasy in the center throughout the day, so I have to go ahead and set it with powder. I'm just gonna take the tiniest bit more foundation, like half a pump, and spread it out just on my cheeks and the lower half of my face, just because that's where I need just a little bit more coverage. And it'll just even out my skin a little bit like that. All right, so I definitely think that is all the foundation I need. I think like this, the foundation looks beautiful. Just 1.5 pumps on the sponge is definitely more than enough. Like I said, I definitely can say it was my fault when I initially tried it out that I just used too much of the foundation, but I think it gives a really beautiful medium coverage. I think the skin looks really beautiful and glowy and luminous, and I pretty much really like how the foundation looks up until the point that I powder. Just to give you guys a little close up with the lighting down again, I still think my pores look big even on the side with the pore smoothing primer. And keep in mind, I usually use this primer as well, and it makes my pores look not even like they're there. This primer is usually beautiful and so smoothing. And then here's the side with no primer, and I almost feel like it looks a little bit better on the side with no primer on the face. So I quickly just applied some concealer and just set underneath my eyes with some powder so my concealer wouldn't crease. Again, repeating myself from earlier, concealer blends out beautifully on top of this foundation. But now we are coming to where I start having issues with this foundation, and that is applying the powder on top. Like I said, I really don't think there would be any issues with this foundation if you can leave it unset. Just keep in mind it does have a little bit of a sticky finish because it is so hydrating, but I definitely think if you are more dry and you typically wear your foundations unset, then you would be good to go with this. But unfortunately, I don't have the skin type where I could do so. These two powders I've been using for years and years. They've been my favorites forever, and that is the Maybelline Fit Me Loose Finishing Powder and then the ColourPop No Filter Sheer Pressed Powder. These are my two favorite pressed powders, so I'm going to show you guys how they look on the skin today, like half and half, just to show you guys that I have been experimenting and trying to get this foundation to work for me. So on the right side of my face, I'm just gonna go in with a little bit of the Maybelline Loose Powder. I don't use that much powder on my face. I'm just going to lightly tap this into my skin, again, like I typically would any powder. So there is the foundation set with loose powder versus the unset foundation. I just think the unset foundation looks so much nicer. This just gives it a really, really matte look, and instantly this foundation mixed with a powder makes the foundation feel like 10 times heavier on my skin. It really, again, is just emphasizing my pores and dry patches, and I just don't like how it looks. I definitely think there's a huge chance that this looks a lot better on camera. That could be the case with a lot of foundations, but in person, this doesn't do the most flattering things for my skin. So I guess I'm caught in this place where I want to leave it unset because it just looks nicer unset, and it also feels a lot more lightweight before it's set down with powder, but it's also very sticky when it's not set, and it does transfer a lot on the finger, so I just feel like it would totally melt off my skin if I didn't put any powder on. So I'm gonna go in and set the left side of my face with the ColourPop pressed powder and see how this looks. When I first tested this method, I did realize that I liked the pressed powder more than the loose powder on the skin. I think it was just a little bit more forgiving with the dryness, if that makes any sense. Like it just looked a little bit more lightweight. And I'm just gonna go ahead and spray everything off with some Fix Plus just to kind of refresh the skin. And again, this is just something that I always do after my foundation routine. So I really quickly just wanted to show you guys the foundation in natural lighting because I know the soft boxes can tend to like smooth things out. I do know that this is a foundation that looks better on camera for sure, and it's almost like the appearance of the foundation isn't so much what bothers me, but it is kind of more just how it feels on the skin. And I know that's not really something that you guys can see unless it is pulling a little heavy looking on camera. I can't really tell from just looking at the viewfinder. I think because of how hydrating it is just making my face feel really heavy and like almost like wet and sticky underneath my powder. And I just personally have had way better experiences with other foundations, the original Fenty foundation and also drugstore foundations, my Maybelline foundations. I have a beautiful Maybelline hydrating foundation that's mixed with like serum. It never feels like this on the skin, so I think this one is going to be a pass for me. I just wanted to show you guys how it looked in natural lighting. All right, you guys, so I'm not even gonna go ahead and finish up the rest of my face or anything like that. I just wanna jump right on into my final thoughts just because I know this video is long enough. So I hope all of this is going to make sense. I still am kind of undecided about this foundation if I'm being 100% honest with you guys, but to me that means I'm probably leaning more towards the side of not liking it, because when I like something, I know that I love it pretty much right off the bat and it's not something that I have to retest. And usually for me, a first impression can really tell all, in my opinion, and from my personal experience. I think that if you guys have very dry skin, if you are able to wear a foundation without powder on top, without a lot of like primers or anything like that in order to keep your foundation on for a long time, I think you are going to really enjoy this foundation. I don't think you're going to like this foundation if you are oily, and I don't think you're going to like this foundation pretty much if you are someone that has to set with a lot of powder. I don't even want to say a lot of powder because I personally don't use a lot of powder, and I still feel like this foundation on me is just having a strange reaction because the foundation is so dewy, and then when it's topped off with the powder, it just doesn't look the greatest on my skin. I really wanted to love this. I had very high hopes for Fenty. My only job here is to review makeup for you guys, and to be honest for you guys, I'm not going to force myself to like something and use something just because it's the newest and most hyped up product. I'm gonna be honest and just say I don't really think it's that great for my skin. I think this is something that you guys are going to have to test out depending on your skin type, depending on your method of makeup application, but I really just don't enjoy products that I have to change up my whole routine and change my method of application in order for them to work for my skin. That's just too much work. When I love a product, it just flows right in with my primers, my powders, and it's just easy breezy and beautiful. It's not CoverGirl, you guys, but you know what I mean. I do have to say I was really impressed also with the wear of this foundation for being a more hydrating foundation that got really luminous and could have easily slipped off the skin. It really didn't. It stayed in place all day, and I really felt like this is a foundation that looks better as it kind of melts more into the skin. It's just not the most comfortable on my personal face all day. So I hope that wasn't too much info for you guys. I'm really not trying to hate on Fenty. You guys know I love Fenty products so much. I personally prefer the original Pro Filt'r Soft Matte foundation. I just think that does a little bit better on my skin, but like I said, if you guys have very dry skin, I think the hydrating one is going to be good for you. All in all, I really hope that you guys enjoyed seeing this review and found it helpful. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel before you leave. I would love to have you guys here as part of my little YouTube fam. If you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos, click that notification bell down below and you'll get notified every single time that I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and of course, I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.